About 6 years ago, as an agency, MMGY, we started going through the exercise of understanding who we are, and why we do what we do, and you go through the exercise of defining a values mission. And part of what we define that as is being an agency that is part of making the world a more peaceful, connected, and inclusive place through the power of travel. And that sounds great when you talk about it, but the question is, what do you do about it? And so one of the several things that we're doing about it is to invest in research, to understand the needs, priorities, preferences of underrepresented traveler audiences, and then to hopefully educate the industry on what those needs are. In part to fulfill our values mission, but most importantly to make a difference in the travel industry overall. This study, A Portrait of Family Travel, is one we released earlier this year. It's a fifth in our series of what we call Inclusivity in Travel series. And it's a study that we surveyed 1,000 people, and these are active family travelers, one of the two. And they all have kids who experience some form of neurodiversity. And that could be somewhere on the spectrum, could be ADHD or other neurodiversity as they define it, right? And so we surveyed each of these individuals, and then we found that about 3/4 of them plan to travel. Now, these are qualified as active travelers, as I said. So 3/4 of them plan to travel as a family in the year ahead, means 1/4 of them don't. They're traveling, but they're not traveling as a family, and that's something that obviously is not a great thing. So we looked at the traveler map and looked at each of these areas and said, from tripping, the pre-planning, the information that's available up front, a critical part of that process, but also looked at the travel experience. So from transportation to experiences and to accommodations and ultimately destinations at large. What did we learn? Well, there's a couple things. First of all, this looks like a pretty standard list of sources you would go for travel planning information. And for the most part, if you look at friends and family, for example, it's very consistent with what we see in travel, in our portrait of American travelers overall, so all travelers. Regardless of family composition. But each of these other areas is actually significantly higher, which at first didn't sound like a big insight, but we realized that information is so valuable to this audience. They're seeking information in advance to really understand and make the trip experience much more predictable. And I've actually got a daughter on the spectrum, and one of the things that we did when we were going to Disney Studios, she used to be very scared of any sort of fast ride. So when we got there, she looked at the rock and roller coaster and said, "I'm going on that." I said, "What? No, you're not." We didn't say that, of course, but we said, "There's no way she's going to do it." So I stood in line with her. It's an hour wait, and I said, "All right, this is great. I'm excited that she's saying this." She kept saying, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it." And got to the front, and then I was expecting her to go, "Nah, let's go." So no, let's do it. Hopped in and went on the ride, the scariest roller coaster I think either of us had ever been on. And she said, and afterwards she said, "How did you do that? I mean, because you've been really scared of doing that." And she said, "I watched the videos on YouTube in advance, over and over again." Geez, I get emotional. I don't think I've ever done that up on stage. Well, there we go. And she said, so I used to, I watched it over and over again. And so for us, the takeaway was not that information, that's a pretty standard thing. I'm preaching to the choir, you all know this. But looking at the places that are doing, whether it's a destination or an attraction, this was found on users posting things on YouTube. The opportunity is really to provide that depth of information, that level of information, that type of information for the brands that are offering these experiences. So that was a real takeaway for me. All right, so we're looking at travel planning, looked at online travel. These are places where people are going to get information. A couple of things I'd point out here. First of all, if you look at travel service provider websites, Hilton, Delta, et cetera, 27% of people said they went to those types of sites for information. Again, doesn't sound all that interesting in the context unless you understand what it looks like comparatively. And overall, that's right up there with online travel agencies typically, like neck and neck. So it seems, people are not finding that type of information at the travel service providers' sites that they need to make the decisions that they need to make for a better travel experience. So big opportunity, and that's the same with traditional travel agents. It's much lower here on this list than it is in our overall travel list. So travel websites specific to families traveling, children who experience neurodiversity. That is somewhere you can see right in the middle, but again, it goes to this reinforcing that people are getting this information from a lot of different places. All right, transportation, personal vehicle, this is much higher. I think it's 57% in our overall study where people would travel by personal vehicle for their upcoming trip in the next 12 months. Here it's 76%. So these families are typically looking for a more controlled environment, something that is more predictable, gives them flexibility, but we also ask them specifically why. I mean, I'm interpreting some of what we see here. You can see up top, flexible travel options, and ability to travel and pack everything we may need. So very similar things that you would see when we ask this question overall for people who go on road trips as families. But they're also then in the middle of the pack, you see 4 and 10 are looking for something, or they're saying it because it's more familiar to my children, it's less overwhelming, and again, a level of predictability, control, and that type of experience. Airlines, looking here, if you look at the blue bars to highlight some of the top information or factors that affect what airlines you choose. You can see a guarantee that the staff has the training that they need, guaranteed ability to board and exit the plane first, and that the trained professionals will be available. So these are the things that, again, they're looking for. There's real opportunity, for training. Again, we've been talking about that a lot. But one of the things that I found interesting is there's also a huge opportunity to educate and train not just the people providing the service, but educating much more broadly in a destination, in an airport, whatever it might be, making people aware of how they can be more inclusive of their fellow travelers. Accommodations. I found it interesting that traditional chain-affiliated hotels are by far the top preferred type of accommodation. And what I would tell you, and I don't have this data to answer exactly why, but my interpretation of that is because they're the most predictable experience. Against this, I know what I'm going to get each time, and that's something that's very important as we plan our family experience. So activities of interest, you can see these are categorized obviously into these various areas. The ones that are bolded are typically noticeably different or statistically significant in their difference compared to the travel population at large. And that doesn't mean it's a 30-point gap, but it means it's statistically significant in its difference. And you can see beach experiences, outdoor type experiences, visiting a theme or amusement park, zoo or aquarium, elements of that sensory fulfillment in many ways. All right, so we asked about open-end question, destinations that were particularly welcoming. And you can see here Disney comes up big. Great Wolf Lodge, Myrtle Beach is on there, and I should have mentioned, there's Stuart. I should have mentioned Stuart and Visit Myrtle Beach was one of the sponsors, along with Visit North Carolina, Afar Media, TripAdvisor, and Universal Orlando. We're all sponsors of this study, so a real big thank you to them, and I'm sure Stuart was very happy to see this next slide I'll show you as well. That shows that Orlando and Myrtle Beach were the two top destinations of interest for these family audiences. All right, so as we think about barriers, last couple slides, think about barriers to travel for these family travelers. You can see lack of guides, interruption of routine. So not having enough information, not knowing what to expect. Again, that issue of predictability. Lack of accommodations or lack of flexibility in the distance. So some of these things are challenges that any traveler would experience. So you have to put that filter on this as well. But the unfamiliarity, step 3, you talk about accommodations, and I talked about some level of unfamiliarity when it comes to an attraction in that example, a ride in a theme park, and creating reinforcing ways, 2 minutes reinforcing ways to increase the predictability, the knowledge, and the familiarity that people have when they're traveling, or before they travel specifically. Cost of travel, crowds, and you can read the other ones just as easily as I can. All right, and then motivations, you can see you see the themes: providing significantly more information for travel planning in advance, maximizing flexibility, maximizing predictability, offering quiet areas. Again, all these things that you all know very well, and you've talked quite a bit about today as I've listened. And then destination attributes. I would highlight this one has a reputation of being friendly and welcoming to families who are traveling with children who experience neurodiversity. Again, it goes to the importance of educating not just in specific places or specific people who are delivering service, but much more broadly throughout the venue or throughout the destination. And then you can see what destinations can do, but providing training and providing information, increasing public awareness, again, it's a big one. And then finally, last slide, in terms of what websites can offer, it's, again, a very consistent theme of offering better information, photos, ratings, and I would offer, again, significant content, video content that confirms the experiences that you offer and that gets these children specifically familiar with what they can expect when they travel there. So that's it. just one last plug in my final 10 seconds. We do offer this report for sale. I don't mean that for our benefit. I just want to be clear on that. We partner with a nonprofit alliance partner called Camp Encourage, and they get 100% of any sales of the full report that we sell. So I promote it for them, but it's also great information to get out, and maybe less so for all of you, but certainly if you want to share that with others that you think might benefit from the full kind of deep dive in this topic, you can find that at this site. So thank you very much. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity.
That data is important. Great. All right.